Access VSA The Kennedy Center, LEAD 2025, Tips for Proposals, Tuesday, October 22, 2024.
Hello, everyone. My name's Hannah Goodwin, and I am going to take us through this webinar. I'll just let you know ahead of time that all of the slides are text only, and I will be reading through them. So we'll just get started. This is the agenda. So I'm just going to give a brief overview. We'll focus on the process, proposal essentials, the different session types, topic tracks, presenter expectations, and Q&A. And all along, if you have questions, you can put them into the Q&A at the bottom. I shouldn't say the bottom. Who knows where it is on your screen? But feel free to either enter them in the Q&A or the chat. So this next slide is 20+ years of leadership, referencing the Leadership Exchange and Arts and Disability Conference. Is in fact more than 20 years. In this conference, if you have been there before, this will be a review for you. And if you haven't, this is a brief introduction to the different things that are kind of both behind the LEAD conference and key components of it, and also the framework really that sets things up for the proposal. So these are the different things that we focus on: customer service and civil rights, practical information and skills, active engagement, different learning styles, moving accessibility forward, sharing information, doing it together, and the perspective that everyone has something to teach and everyone has something to learn. So in one way or another, each of these word pairings or phrasing factors into the call for proposals, the proposals that are accepted, and the conference overall, the aims of the conference overall. So for our process, as I assume you know, the call has opened up. You can start a proposal at any time now, and you don't have to finish it in one sitting. So you can get going, you can kind of get started and then continue on. Proposals will be accepted until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on December 2nd, 2024. Incomplete proposals are not accepted. There's a review team. So for each proposal, there are multiple reviewers that will go over that proposal. We always avoid a conflict of interest, and that call for reviewers has, I believe, just been launched. So if that's something that appeals to you, you can check into that and apply. And then the review team, so in addition to multiple reviewers being part of it, there are discussions for clarification, overlap of content, etc. The notifications for the proposals, whether or not they're accepted, will go out by the end of March 2025. So the key considerations for your proposal: one is the relationship to the cultural sector. And I'm just going to take a moment here to really stress that the Leadership Exchange and Arts and Disability Conference is focused on cultural organizations and institutions moving forward in accessibility. So it's not, there is another conference, like mini conference, Edit Lead, that focuses on arts education. and in all of those pieces. And we often get asked about more content related to artists with disabilities, and that's actually not what this conference is about. Although this whole conference in the end supports artists with disabilities, or people working in the field, et cetera, because again, the focus is on accessibility in cultural organizations and institutions in all aspects of that work, behind the scenes, audience and visitor centered, et cetera. So that was, I went on a bit. I always get a lot of questions there. So the second point is disability perspective and experience. Very important to have that a part of the conference, which means, of course, having it part of the proposals and the sessions. Engagement. How do you engage or hope to engage the attendees in your session? We are not looking for lectures. So this is really going back to some of the things that I mentioned earlier. It's really a sharing environment, sharing information, moving things forward together, and incorporating different perspectives. Multiple perspectives, and again, this will come up again further into the webinar, but having multiple perspectives from people who play different roles, from people from different organizations, et cetera. That the proposals are not organization specific. And we recognize that there are a lot of conferences that really like case studies and seek them out. LEAD is not one of those conferences. So case studies are great. They play an important role, but in general, we've found that at the LEAD conference, they don't quite work the way people hope they will. And so if you have something, well, again, I'll go into this more later on, but just to please keep that in mind. It should be more about the process and the work and the decision-making and the outcomes than it is about the organization. The session description and the session plan need to be in alignment. So those two things are not separate from each other, but in the proposal, they align. And then last but not least, and hugely important, is that the information that is you're aiming to share through your session and you highlight in your proposal is practical. People really come to LEAD because they want to take practical information away back to their home institutions. So the essential components of the proposal: session title and description, the takeaways, and again, so the takeaways are really what you're hoping someone will leave your session learning, knowing, having, and there are a wide range of things that that can be, and those will pop up at different points during this webinar. But the takeaways are really important. Disability community perspective, also really important. I'll just say really important for each of these. The session organization, engagement and interactive learning, topic tracks, the intended audience and experience level, additional information, which is optional, the presentation type, and the presentation team. So these are the different components that will go into your proposal. So from title to program description, have the title of your conference, your session, and I just want to say short, clear are the two things that get the most positive feedback from participants. Participants are looking, the conference has gotten really large. There are a lot of different sessions. There are a lot of different titles. And sometimes people submitting a proposal submit either very long titles that are almost like a mini description, or they're very catchy, but that doesn't mean that someone actually knows what's covered there. So if you're thinking about your title, I would say aim for clarity and length. Don't make it too long. Again, the takeaways. So the takeaways goes back to what will someone learn? What will they be able to walk away with and ponder? A summary of key points could be something. It could be the process, the decision-making journey that you and your organization went on. It could be an approach that didn't quite work, the mistakes that were made, what happened because of those mistakes, and so on. So things that have process, not just process, but process with outcomes so that people understand the decision-making, the different things that you've tried so they can pick out what might work at their organization. If you have designed a specific tool, that's great, et cetera, et cetera. But it should be something that you can really imagine. Someone from an organization working in the cultural sector that may be a different type of organization than yours, but where they can say, oh yes, when we were thinking about how to open up this part of our program, we engaged such and such community, this is how we approached it, you know, and so on and so forth. So the organization and presenter or collaboration. So again, we're looking for multiple perspectives, and this is really, really important. I'll just be very straightforward and say we've been getting an increasing number of proposals by solo presenters, and sometimes that works really well. But it's really invaluable to have multiple perspectives. And if you're not anchored in a cultural organization, and then having someone from a cultural organization partnering with you is also really important. So that organization and presenter collaboration, spend some time thinking about that. If it's really worth it, and we're always happy to help. Interactive engagement, and we will talk about this more later as well. But again, LEAD really isn't looking for lectures, really hoping to have the audience be engaged and also having a presentation that works for a variety of learning styles and learning preferences. And then description. So the description of your session of the session you're proposing does not have to be exhaustive. It doesn't have to have all of the details in it. It needs to have the key components and your approach. So for example, it's really helpful for people to know ahead of time if you're going to be doing, if it's very geared towards the hands-on activity, very active activity, or if there's going to be group discussion, either small or large group discussion. Things like that are very helpful. So if you're familiar with LEAD, you may notice there are a few changes here. The conference session formats. So there are 3 concurrent session types. One is a panel. The second is skill building. The third is a think tank. And then we have the lightning talks, which are 15 minutes long, plus an additional 5 minutes for Q&A. And we'll get into each of these. And there it is, the panel. So a panel can be a panel of 2, and not more than 4. So it's kind of in that range of multiple perspectives, but not so many people that there's not enough time for everyone. And so the panel really recognizes the value of multiple perspectives on or approaches to a single topic. It offers the possibility of extending reach, which is a great a model for all kinds of organizations. So it can be cross-institutional, across different size organizations. It can have different lived experiences. So, but it is really holds that possibility of extending reach beyond what any one person could do. The panel aims to provide practical tips, tools, and resources, and information sharing through active engagement of participants. So the panel session expectation is that there would be up to 60 minutes of presentation. Please note the up to. It will shift a little bit depending on how the presenters decide to handle certain things, including that important interactive component. So the interactive component should be a minimum of 15 minutes of conversation, exchange, discussion, and or Q&A. We really recommend that the Q&A or that interactive component, if it is, say, discussion, is not all held to the end. So that interactive component can occur throughout the presentation. The up to 60 minutes of presentation could be 3 20-minute segments with space in between for different types of interaction. We do hear again and again and again that attendees really want that opportunity to ask questions, to reflect, to discuss, etc. The skill building sessions are really focused on having a hands-on opportunity to teach a tangible skill. So the introductory and presentation time should be minimal. And what we want to know and what the attendees might want to know is how will the hands-on component work in the session space and context? So in general, thinking about practicing something and refining it, how will leaders interact with participants during the session, and can have some kind of sharing or Q&A or both. So the skill building sessions can cover a wide range of different types of things that you could focus on. It could be related to something like assistive technology. It could be putting tools into the hands of teaching artists who are anchored in a cultural organization. It could be focused on customer service, problem solving and troubleshooting. I mean, there's no end to the possibilities, but the focus really is intended to have the majority of the time actively engaged with learning a skill. So 10 minutes of presentation, kind of introduction to the activity, and then that interactive component is really looking at the rest of the activity time, which would be about 65 minutes. And again, that's not set in stone. It may be that 65 minutes has some places in the middle where there's check-ins, where there's other kinds of interaction. We assume with whoever's presentation is actively involved in that hands-on component as well. The think tank, I'm going to try that again. The think tank is a highly interactive and discussion-based session, and a little bit different than the other types of sessions, in that it really is focused on discussion. So there's at least one moderator or presenter who is very well versed in the topic and has good facilitation skills. The presentation time that would introduce it is limited to 15 minutes. And the key questions are, how will the moderator prepare the group for conversation? How will they wrap it up? And the think tanks really are an excellent opportunity for experienced access workers to discuss important topics, to explore going to the next level, to discuss different topics that may be adjacent to some of the things that we think of as accessibility, may intersect with accessibility, may be at the far reaches of where some, and I mean far forward reaches that some people who have been working in access for a long time are going or trying to go. So anyway, that is the think tank. And the takeaways in this situation, if you're writing your proposal, then think along the lines of, what are the questions you're asking? You know, the outcomes are going to depend on what the discussion is, who's in the room. So the outcomes are going to be taking away, to a certain extent, taking away the fruits of those discussions. So how it is set up and the questions being asked, the subjects that are centered in that think tank are going to be some of the things that you might put in the takeaway. So the expectation here, somewhat similar to the skill building, and that the presentation or introduction of this topic is minimized. In this case, it's about 15 minutes. And then the interactive component, which in the think tank is going to be conversation, discussion, reflection. It may be going back and forth between some of those things, should be about an hour. The lightning talks. Lightning talks are one presenter only. Occasionally there's an exception, but really they're intended to be one presenter. It's a tight, highly focused 15-minute presentation on a specific topic or idea. And again, the range of lightning talks that we've had have been just all over the place in a good way in terms of topics and areas that people are addressing. The interactive component for a lightning talk follows the 15-minute presentation with a Q&A that is limited to 5 minutes. The topic tracks, I'm just going to read through these in the proposal. Submission form, they are all defined, but right now I'm just going to read the topic titles. Building buy-in, built environment, customer service and staff training, evaluation and research, identity, intersectionality and inclusion, laws and regulations, outreach and community engagement, planning and policy, technology, universal design, and accessibility services and programs. The proposal itself. So communicating your session, that title and brief description. Again, I'll just say, aim for clarity. What will people learn and take away? How will you and your co-presenters achieve that? What is the role of the presenters? What is the structure of your session? What are your engagement strategies? The proposal needs to contain enough detail to confirm whether or not it's really workable. And all of these different things need to align. Interactive engagement examples. So I want to repeat something I said earlier, which is that the conference has gotten very large, and each session has the potential to be very large. And that has shifted to an extent how we think about interactive engagement, because some things are, they're very tricky in a very large group. So for example, splitting into small groups, switching around in small groups is very challenging to do in a 75-minute session. There are times when a small group discussion or interaction or activity is completely appropriate, but I'm just throwing that out there for consideration. So one is time allotted for Q&A. And I think it is a rare session that shouldn't have at least a little bit of time for Q&A. That Q&A can be at the end, or it can be intermittent. It can be in key times. There are all kinds of ways to handle it, but it is important. And we do recommend not holding all of it till the end. Reflections. So asking participants to reflect on something individually or with someone next to them, utilizing prompts, actually is a really great way to engage people without shifting, sometimes to lead into a Q&A, sometimes to lead into another session, etc. There's a lot of nice ways that a fairly simple reflection can really provide a point of engagement in a new way. Large or small group discussion. So again, if you're looking to do small groups, that really should be thought through in a way that would work for a really large group of attendees. It's also possible to have large group discussions where you're engaging the entire group or having some sharing, things like that. Group work and activity, again, depending on what your session is and how you're setting it up. Obviously, in something like skill building, that's going to be a part of it. And maybe just as obvious with a think tank, the whole thing is interactive. Hands-on experimentation and learning. So again, that may mostly be part of a skill building, but there is the potential for that to be part of other sessions as well. And then practicing with feedback, which again is going to be a feature of a skill building session. So presenter expectations. One is good communication with the lead team and your presentation team, as that applies. So we ask that if you do run into a change or a problem or something like that, that you let us know as soon as possible, that the deadlines are met. So you're meeting your deadlines. Your session is true to your proposal. So please, if something changes from the time you've submitted your proposal in the fall, early winter of 2024, and spring of 2025, and you either want to make a big shift or do something differently, please reach out. You can contact the LEAD team. It's just really so helpful to know. And the expectation is that when you and your session arrive at LEAD in the summer, that it is in fact in alignment with the proposal that you submitted. The other presenter expectations, commitment to accessibility. Attendees at LEAD across the entire spectrum of disability. You know, we're a varied bunch, and it's really important that your presentation and your session is accessible. So that means that the handouts are accessible, and also that your presentation is accessible. And I'm just going to break that into two different parts. One is that a lot of people have a PowerPoint presentation, and the PowerPoint presentation itself needs to be accessible to the people in the room. So that means it needs to follow all of the guidelines for a visually accessible presentation. There's audio for an audio accessible presentation. And unless you're planning on sharing it, the images would be made, let me back up a little bit. Any images in it would be described to your audience. If you're planning on sharing it with your attendees, then those images need to be tagged, and whatever the final component, whether it's a PDF or a slide copy or whatever, that would have to be, if you're planning on sharing it with people, it has to be accessible to everyone. So accessible to people who use screen readers, etc. So the presentation is accessible. There are two different components. One is if you have a PowerPoint, and then the other is how you are sharing your information. There are aspects of accessibility that LEAD takes care of. So for example, ASL interpretation and captioning, but how you think through all of the different pieces of your presentation need to consider the diversity of your audience. And then the final presenter expectation, but definitely important, is to create a respectful and safe environment. People will be coming into the conference with different experiences, different lived experiences, and also different places in their learning and accessibility journey. The presenter benefits: you are sharing your knowledge, which I think if you work in accessibility, that is the best, because you just know that you're helping move things forward. You have the opportunity to expand your network, and you get a free day of the conference. And I think we're at the Q&A.
Yes, we are at the Q&A portion of the webinar. Please feel free to put any of your questions in the chat or raise your hand if you prefer to voice. We'll give a few moments here to let everyone have a chance to think of what they might have for questions for us. All right, we have our first question. And the question is, can you speak a bit more about case studies, pros and cons?
Sure. So case studies are often designed to focus very intensely on one situation in one organization. So the pro of that is that there is an in-depth look. Often it goes from beginning to end and has that kind of comprehensive arc. And the downside is that sometimes they're so organization specific and they really get caught up in the details of how whatever that was happened at that organization, that it's hard for attendees to find the takeaways. So in an environment where the goal is to have case studies that are intended to generate excitement, to showcase something new, sometimes that having that whole arc works a little bit better than it does at LEAD. If you have a case study that you feel like is really important and could work at LEAD, then I think then what would make it work would be to step back a little bit from having it be hyper focused on the organizational journey, and really very focused on the practical things that were discovered, learned, etc. Like what are the outcomes? What are the takeaways that someone could take and apply in a wide range of organizations? And that would also still work in that same organization that may be presenting the case study when their organization changes. Because that's one of the things that we know about cultural organizations is that, and accessibility, is that everything can change in a minute. There can be a reorganization, there can be a position lost or a position gained. A funder can drop out. I mean, there are a million things that can change. And so if it is a case study and someone can demonstrate that there are components built in, then someone can take away that information and apply it flexibly, then I'm sure it could be considered. But really it needs to stay focused not so much on the institutional or organizational journey, but rather what has happened, been learned, been discovered, been created that could apply widely in a wide range of organizations.
All right, we had a question that was asking if we would be posting this video or this presentation afterwards. And yes, we will be polishing it up, making sure all the captions are situated, and we will be putting this on the 2025 LEAD website. I have put that link in the chat, which is accesslead.org. And then I got a couple more questions for you, Hannah. Yeah. The question is the primary focus on arts and performing venues?
Oh, we think, so think of the cultural sector really broadly. exhibit-based venues, museums of all kinds, shapes and sizes, performing arts of all kinds, shapes and sizes. Also places with live collections like aquariums, zoos, botanical gardens, parks. Trying to think who it, so yeah, that's sometimes community arts centers that may do a mishmash of things. You know, they have an exhibition gallery and they do performances, things like that, but it is across the arts. And when I say performing arts, I mean the whole range of performing arts.
Yeah, and we've had ballparks, stadiums, places like that present before as well. So yeah. Next question is, are there particular topic sessions or session areas that have been missing in the past that you are particularly interested in seeing at LEAD?
Why, yes. What a great question. In fact, I was just thinking, oh, if no one has any more questions. So let's see, I have a little list here. So anything related to historic settings or organizations that are housed in historic buildings. Because, you know, sometimes that is almost seen as an instantaneous barrier to access, and people don't realize all the different ways that you can work around that. But also it's just an area that we get very few proposals in, and it's an issue everywhere. So anything related to creating greater accessibility in historic buildings or settings. Visitor services and customer services sessions that really show pathways to problem solving, good training examples, protocol, etc. Designing a good staff training program, the things that go into that. Things related to employment that are very practical, and that can be focused on HR and staff kind of situation. It can be focused on, we've actually had some great sessions on focusing on things like writing a job description, which often is not something that HR does, but something that the managers are doing. But that could also, thinking about employment can also mean how you're thinking about, if you're, say, in a performing arts center or in a museum where you're hiring artists, how are things set up for artists with disabilities? Are there systems that can be put in place? Are there artist writers? Any kind of components that address that relationship from the organizational end, like what are you doing on your end to make this work? And thinking about buy-in an organizational culture shift, and really focusing on what are the things that got you there, you know, veterans, and in particular, so great to have organizations that primarily work with veterans or are connected to various sections of the military, but also really important to have organizations that aren't primarily in that section, think together about how to provide opportunities for veterans, which again can be anything from the employment end to participating in whatever the cultural organization is offering. And creative aging. So I know that gets interpreted in a lot of different ways. We are still solidly in the stretch of time where in the States we have like 10,000 people a day turning 65, and some of the things that come along with that in terms of changes of ability is a big deal, and particularly in some organizations. How do you remain welcoming? If you're working with artists as they age, what does that look like? Volunteers, there are a lot of organizations that have volunteer groups that are primarily made up of retirees. What does that look like? And then, of course, the creative engagement elements, that ways in which you can look at really welcoming and engaging people creatively within these different organizations. So those are a few things that we do not get a lot of proposal submissions for.
All right, I have a question about the lightning sessions or the lightning talks, and I think I can actually answer this question. The question was, if someone wanted to participate in a lightning talk and they have 15 minutes of a proposal to offer, do they also have to find others interested in filling the time to do the other 15 minutes to make up that hour? No. You submit your 15-minute lightning talk, and then we take other submissions that are 15-minute lightning talks and we will put them together in the time slot. So no, when you submit your proposal for a lightning session, all you need to worry about is your 15 minutes.
A great question.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, do we have any other questions from our participants?
What did I forget?
I know you covered quite a bit, Hannah. And again, for all of you, number one, thank you so much for being here and being interested. Oh, this is a very good question. Can you send in a proposal and also apply to be a reviewer? The answer is yes. Absolutely. We always look at those who have a proposal that needs to be reviewed and those who have applied to be reviewers, and we make sure that there's no conflict of interest. So if you have submitted a proposal, you will not be reviewing your own. We have we have a system for sorting that out. So please, if you are applying to be a presenter, also feel free to apply to read proposals. We appreciate that.
I can just add one little thing, that the reviewers are grouped in teams. Like, not everyone reviews every proposal. So usually that whole team would not review any proposals that one of the members of that team was on. So you wouldn't be out of the group if there happened to be a discussion or something. Sometimes, it may happen that it just doesn't work that way mathematically, but you still wouldn't ever review your own proposal.
Another question is the LEAD team able to help connect us to other people who may be doing similar proposals to form a panel?
Yes.
And then this is kind of related. It's a question that says, as we are working on our proposals, can we email out other questions? Absolutely. Please feel free to email the lead@kennedy-center.org any questions, and I'll make sure to put that in the chat. And again, with that last question about connections, if you're trying to write a proposal and you're really wanting to connect with someone before submitting a proposal, please reach out and we will try our very best to get you connected with others that are interested in the same subjects. All right, I'm going to put in a few other links into the chat. I would highly, highly suggest coming to our website, which is accesslead.org, which will have a bunch of information as it comes out, including information about proposal writing resources. This is where this video will be posted if you want to come back and refer to it. The actual proposal form submission website. I hope that, oh, it didn't work. I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can get the hyperlink. This is also on, oh, it's not working. I'm so sorry. If you go to the accesslead.org website and you go to the proposal tab, there's a big button that says submit, and that will bring you right to the website where you will fill out the form and submit your proposals. And again, if you have any additional questions about the process, or if you needed the proposal form in a different format, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at our email address.
And Sarah, I see one more question.
Let's see. Are we able to submit more than one proposal? Yes, the answer is yes. You can submit up to 3. And Emily, thank you so much. Found my link that I was missing. That will take you directly to the proposal submission form. All right. Are there any last questions?
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your interest, and we really look forward to reading all of your wonderful proposals. It's so exciting to see what people have to, oh, hold on. One last question. Can we apply for Ed@Lead as well? Yes. You may also, if you have a proposal that fits into the Ed@Lead subject matters, please feel free to also apply for Ed@Lead. That again deals more with the education and arts education and special education. And if you do have questions specifically about Ed@Lead, please feel free to reach out to our colleagues at their email address, which is vsainfo@kennedy-center.org. And I'll put that in the chat as well. And it is a separate application, but it is also on the LEAD website. And Emily just put that in the chat, which will bring you directly to the Ed@Lead call for proposals if you have questions about that.
Sarah, do we have 1 minute for just one thing that I wanted to throw out?
Sure. Yeah, it's 2:57.
Ah, there you go.
There you go.
Which is related to questions that I've been asked in the past. If you are submitting a a session related to compliance, ADA compliance. Just make sure that someone on that team or all of the people on that team are really well-versed and knowledgeable in the particular laws that apply. That's all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very, very much for being here. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask us any questions that you have. And we hope to be reading your wonderful, wonderful proposals very shortly.
Yay.
Yay.
And to Cleveland next summer.
Yeah. Come to Cleveland. We'll see you all there. All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody.